loud voice. First, our esteemed guest, Professor Sudhir Kumar, keynote speaker, Dr. Vic Gaffney, our guest of honor, Professor M.K. Pandey, our guest of honor, and Professor Deepa S.P. Mathur, convener and head of the English department, to please be on stage. Ma'am and sir, we all welcome you with a warm heart. Is the mind of oppressed. A quote by Steve Biko. Namaste, and a very warm welcome to all the esteemed guests, scholars, and participants. We are gathered here at the University of Rajasthan, Department of English, Jaipur, for the significant international conference on decolonizing narratives and interpretation. We embark on an intellectual journey that seeks to reclaim, reinterpret, and reimagine the stories that define us. Literature and culture are not just mirrors reflecting our past. They are also tools to carve out a liberating future. Ladies and gentlemen, I behind us only, the compere of this session, invite all of you with a very warm heart, and it makes me feel so good to see these smiley faces, this enthusiasm and intellectual minds. We are gathered here for this momentous international conference on decolonizing narratives and interpretation. Let us begin by invoking the divine presence of Ma Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom, learning, and the arts. Before this, I just want to introduce what the lighting of the lamp really means to us. The lighting of the lamp is not just a ceremonial tradition. It is a symbol of enlightenment, knowledge, and the removal of ignorance. Tamso Ma Jyotirgamay, lead us from darkness to light. With each wick that is lit today, we reaffirm our commitment to truth, wisdom, and intellectual sovereignty. I now invite our esteemed guests to step forward and participate in this sacred ritual. Professor Deepa S.P. Mathur, the convener and head of the English department, Professor Sudhir Kumar, our keynote speaker, Dr. Vic Gaffney, our guest of honor, and Professor N.K. Pandey, the guest of honor. Ma'am, please. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. As we move forward, a university is not just a place of learning. It is a temple of wisdom, a beacon that guides generation towards enlightenment. Today, as we embark on this scholarly journey at the International Conference on Decolonizing Narratives and Interpretation, it is only fitting that we pay tribute to the very institute that nurtures us. Our pursuit of knowledge, the University of Rajasthan. A university belief or anthem is not just a song, it is a melody of legacy, a symphony of collective aspiration, and a reminder to our responsibility to uphold the values of education and progress. As we stand together, let us immerse ourselves in these so stirring words of our university Kulbi. I invite all of you to please stand. Thank you, everyone. Now, it's time to extend our Atithi Sarkar as we warmly welcome our esteemed dignitaries. To officially embark the beginning of transformative dialogues, we welcome Professor Deepa S.P. Mathur, the convener and head of English department, to welcome our keynote speaker, Professor Sudhir. Professor Sudhir Kumar. Sorry, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. With us, we have our guest of honor, Dr. Vic Caffney. I invite Dr. Aditi Kalra, our organizing secretary, on stage to welcome our guest of honor with Shrifal and Shawl. Now I invite Dr. Arun Singh, our organizing secretary, on stage to welcome our guest of honor, Professor N.K. Pandit. Professor Sushma Yadav is unwell today, and we miss her presence for sure. I wish her all the very best and best wishes to get well soon. As we gather here for this prestigious decolonizing narratives and interpretation, literary and cultural studies in India, it is only fitting to begin with the words from driving force behind this event. A leader, a scholar, and an inspiration to many, she has played a pivotal role in shaping the conference. It is my honor to invite on stage Professor Deepa S.P. Mathur, Head of the English Department and convener, to deliver the welcome address. Ma'am, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Niharika. Good morning. Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and friends, all my dear scholars, each one. I've smiled to each one of you because you have all come on my personal invitation. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm happy to see you. It is my immense pleasure and privilege to welcome you all to this conference aptly themed Decolonizing Narratives and Interpretations, Literary and Cultural Studies in India. As the convener of this gathering, I'm delighted to see such a confluence of brilliant minds, united by a shared commitment to revisiting and redefining the frameworks that shape our understanding of literature, history, and culture. The theme of our conference is not merely academic. It is deeply rooted in the socio-cultural and political realities of post-colonial nations like ours. India, with its pluralistic ethos, rich cultural ethos, and political realities of post-colonial nations like ours, has rich cultural heritage and complex colonial history. It offers fertile ground for re-examining the dominant paradigms that have shaped our intellectual discourse. For centuries, the narratives of the colonized were filtered through the lens of imperial ideologies. Our histories were rewritten, our cultural practices exoticized, and our indigenous knowledge systems marginalized. The task before us today is not just to unearth these silenced voices, but to restore their rightful place in the global intellectual arena. Why decolonization is vital? The act of decolonizing narratives is not an act of erasure, but of inclusion. It is about dismantling monolithic interpretations and making space for diverse voices, perspectives, and epistemologies. This effort extends beyond revisiting history. It permeates literature, art, education, and the way we engage with our cultural identities. For instance, how often do our syllabi privilege the canonical texts of Western literature while relegating regional literatures to the marginal? Why are the oral traditions of our tribal communities or the wisdom embedded in folk tales and bhakti poetry rarely given the same academic legitimacy as Shakespeare or Milton? These are the questions we must ask ourselves if we are to decolonize our literary and cultural studies effectively. Now we have reclaimed the indigenous. Decolonization for us means reclaiming the narratives of our land, not as acts of defiance, but as assertions of identity. It involves celebrating the literary traditions of Kalidass, Kabir, Bama, alongside Chinua Achebe and Gugi Wa Thiong'o, because I have worked on African literature also. It means valuing the epistemic frameworks of Rasa theory and Gandhian thought as much as structuralism or postmodernism. Now, in the realm of culture, it calls for a deeper engagement with the traditions of the worlds, the oral epics of the broad community, and the aesthetics of Madhubani paintings. Stories that are ours, waiting to be retold in the ways that resonate globally. As research scholars and educators, our role is to interrogate the hegemony of Eurocentric paradigms and foster a more inclusive academic discourse. And this requires us to rewrite syllabi, encourage interdisciplinary approaches, and adopt methodologies that center the indigenous and the local without essentializing them. Now let us also remember that decolonization is not about rejecting the West. It is about fostering a dialogue where all voices are heard and all perspectives are valued. It is an act of intellectual liberation, not isolation. Through this conference, I hope we can initiate a vibrant discourse on these issues. Let us challenge ourselves to think critically, to engage with perspectives that are unfamiliar or uncomfortable, and to envision a future where the narratives of all people are given dignity equally and equal space. In conclusion, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to each one of you for being here today. I am confident that our insights, ideas, and discussions will significantly contribute to this critical endeavor of decolonizing our narratives and interpretations. Together, let us rewrite the stories we tell about ourselves and the world. Stories that are rooted in truth, diversity, and justice. And I look forward to an enriching exchange of ideas. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, ma'am. Every word that you have said touched us truly. From my end, I would like to close my statement by saying, as we embark on these discussions over the next 2 days, let's remember, decolonization is just not an academic endeavor. It's an act of reclaiming identity, a movement towards intellectual sovereignty. May our conversation today pave the path for a future where our narratives are no longer borrowed, but authentically our own. With that, let's dive into the discussion, wishing you all an enriching and thought-provoking conference. We have very insightful addresses and lectures that we are waiting for. A very insightful discourse awaits us as Professor Sudhir Kumar from Punjab University, Chandigarh, takes the stage. Professor Sudhir Kumar, a retired professor of English and former team research at Punjab University, is currently a visiting professor at Nalanda University. A gold medalist from Agra University, he has taught and researched for nearly 4 decades, contributing to knowledge system, literary theories, and cultural studies. He has published over 90 research papers. That's a lot, sir, truly. Delivered lectures in India and abroad and translated award-winning works. A recipient of multiple honors, including the K.K. Birla Foundation Fellowship and 4 university gold medals, he continues to shape Indic scholarship and academic research. Sir, everything that I've read about you truly inspired me a lot. Sir, please, I welcome you on stage.
धन्यवाद निहारिका. Let us start with a few mantras as we already do before we start any auspicious undertaking or Krishna. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Gacchate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purneva Vashishyate. Om Sangatsattvam Samvadartham Sambho Mananse Janatam Deva Bhage Yatha Purve Sanjanana Upasate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I'll come back to these mantras and their meanings because they are highly germane to the theme chosen for this Sangoshti, for this seminar. But I am grateful to University of Rajasthan, established in 1947 or 48, whose motto was also carefully chosen. Remember, Dharmo Vishwasya Jagataha Pratishtha. I repeat, Dharmo Vishwasya Jagataha Pratishtha. It is for the establishment of Dharma. Dharma, not in an Abrahamic religious denominational sense, but perhaps in its most universalistic and wide-ranging sense. It is for the establishment of Dharma that this whole world exists. If Dharma is either distorted or perverted, then there is no pratishtha. Then this world goes to seed. That is to say, this world which is mediated through unethical means, darshan, worldviews, will come to destruction. So look at the motto of your university, that straightway comes from Mahanarayana Upanishad. Look, your forefathers, our ancestors, worthy ancestors of this university, they were men and women of wisdom. And that's why they deliberately chose that this university, all its intellectual enterprises, be established in the discourse, all-inclusive discourses of Dharma, which is almost impossible to be translated into English for all the valid reasons. Okay, so I'm grateful to the University of Rajasthan, Department of English, so ably headed by Professor Deepa S. Mathur, and one who is Apadipo Bhava, one who is deep in herself, one whose light is lightened, one who is like a lamp by virtue of her own light. That is Deepa. So I hope that every head of the department, otherwise uneasy will always lie the head that wears a crown in the Indian system of higher education, until or unless you up the bhava. So that is very important, and I am so happy to learn about the department and its activities, including the present seminar. I think for the first time after a long time, I read a very meaningful, a Loka Sangraha, a theme note which is directly addressed to the well-being of the culture, of the nation, and of course, of the entire world. Very few of us, particularly academics situated in departments of English, they are so heavily westernized. I'm not saying anything against the West. I'm ready, we are all ready to receive whatever is noble in the Western tradition. But I'm not alone. I will tell you how systematically the intellectuals in India who perhaps knew more English than all of us put together, they singularly singled out the institutionalized form of English, its dominance, its violence, for the present condition of India. And I will start with, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay to Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia. You have Sri Aurobindo, you have Swami Vivekananda, you have Gandhi, and you have the most cosmopolitan of Indian thinkers, Tagore. You have one of the most eminent cultural theorists in the form of Sri Aurobindo, Mahatma Gandhi, and of course Ananda Kentish Kumar as well. So I'm not alone in raising what else Anantamurthy was trying to say in writing that great essay in search of identity. So that's another chapter. But we have never been averse to the West. We've never been averse to any thought tradition that comes to us from outside, even either through invasion and the most brutal form of violence. We even welcome those influences and try to understand not only the Atma Bodh, not only the self-realization or self-knowledge, not only that Atma Bodh, but the Anya Bodh, the knowledge of the other. Whenever and wherever we were obsessed with Atma Bodh, and this is an answer to Sanjit sir's question over the breakfast table. Whenever we were obsessed with only self-knowledge and ignored the knowledge of the other, we suffered. Historical evidence is so heavily pitted against us. Those who are only obsessed with spiritual knowledge suffered and will suffer heavily if they ignore to their own peril the worldly knowledge that is the external matter. And therefore, the Upanishad says, Vidya, look at this, Avidya and Vidya, the worldly knowledge, the knowledge of the external world, and the knowledge of the internal world. These are the two words. And you don't have to be a Hindu, you don't have to be an Indian in order to suggest that this is the typology that we have created. This is a universal category. There is an outside world and there is a world inside. So, they say, Avidya Kontipa Avidya. That is the knowledge of the outside world. We can conquer all the sorrows of the world by our avidya. That is our knowledge of the material world, the materiality of this existence. Contrary to again the view that only Charvaks were the materialists. We have always and already been very much materialistic in our conception of our worldview, which is, I will prove, the worldview of Sahitya and art, not the worldview of literature. I will have a running quarrel with these words and phraseology, which is imposed on the young minds of our own university graduates. We have to see whether we are a tabula rasa, a culture and civilization that has no knowledge tradition of its own. So we accept that literature, culture, society, nation, religion, all these terms are so massively loaded in a particular knowledge tradition which has been imposed on us. Do we have no hold on our own thought tradition, on our own knowledge systems, so we can again regain our lost self as envisioned by A.C. Bhattacharya, by Gandhi, by Tagore, that in order to have a meaningful dialogue with the West, you have to regain your lost self. That self, that Atma Bodh, that Smriti Bodh, that memory. Smriti can't be translated as memory only. But that Bodh, that realization of who we are, through or by being parasitically dependent on other taxonomies and other epistemologies. India has always been a very rich culture, knowledge culture. So I'm grateful to Deepaji, Dr. Vic Gaffney, Professor Sanjay Mishra ji, Professor S.K. Agrawal, who are all my Sahadyas, and Professor N.K. Pandey, and the mercurial and dynamic organizing secretary of this Anushthan, that is Arun Singh. So thank you, Arun Singh, for inviting me here with the permission of the chair. And of course, I'm also grateful to this enlightened audience where some of my seniors are sitting in the front row, and I have learned so many things from them, as I learn, and I will continue to learn so many things from you. So first things first, why are we obsessed with decolonizing, colonizing, recolonizing? Look at the textuality of these kinds of pratyas. Pratyas means concepts. If you know who you are, Pandit, if you know who you are, if I am swastha, swastha does not mean only your physical health. If you are established in yourself, and if you know, as I said, if you know how to be whole, that is the meaning of being swastha, atmastha, then you won't use these words. Again, they are fashioned out in the West. We may be using a derivative taxonomy, a derivative epistemology in order to explain or describe the present condition of ours. So that is the first point. As a student of what I say, Sahitya and Kavya, that is, these are our own terms. So if we are a student of Sahitya and Kavya, that you call literature, and Sanskriti, that you call culture, these are the different concepts altogether. Kindly do not superimpose the concept of culture on Sanskriti. And for God's sake, or for the sake of the divine common sense, do not impose the concept of literature as it evolved in the West on the concept of either Sahitya or Kavya. Forget decolonization. First, you have to explore the meanings of these key terms. Forget learning about Sahitya, Kavya, Sanskriti, and Rashtra with those terms that come to us through English translations. You are Bharat. Bharat has a long history. You can only understand how our Rashtra cannot be the nation. You can only understand that Bharatiya Sanskriti can never ever be the culture as it is understood in the West until or unless you qualify very much in the beginning of your lecture or in the writing of your dissertation that whenever I use culture or literature, I want to say Sahitya or Sanskrit. Only then you are speaking as an Indian. If you are speaking as HMV, his master's words, as if you are speaking as a Caliban, you would be a great scholar, but you would be mimicked as so famously said by, not by Nepal first, but by Sri Aurobindo, Gandhi, and above all, by Ananda Kumar. Tagore in his novel, Gora, second page, Tagore, our first great cosmopolitan thinker, did he ever talk about the colonial discourse? No. Tagore always talked about what it means to be Swadeshi, what it means to be a Bharati, what it means to be an Indian. He was in perpetual search, perpetual quest for reclaiming that self. And that self, that has a Swadeshi or a native dimension, that has a Rashtriya dimension, national dimension, and that at the same time has a cosmic or a global dimension. This is the meaning of when I said Purnamada Purnamidam. This is whole, but that is also whole. Why should you hate the West? Because the West is also a part of the whole. This is all. Bharat is also a part of the whole. Bharat is not whole. So don't carry any illusion that we are the sole copyright owners of the wisdom tradition of the world. Don't carry any such illusion, because in our knowledge tradition, if knowledge or jnana is available to us through the most illiterate, even from the most illiterate and ignorant person, and knowledge does sometimes come to us through or in those quarters where we least expect us to be a willing learner. And therefore, the first duty of a good student is to receive that wisdom from all quarters. Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnamudachyate, and it is from the whole that the whole will emerge. I am presently a visiting professor at University of Nalanda. And my first lecture was Nalandas of the mind. What we did, why should we now say that Nalanda was physically destroyed by Bakhtiyar Khilji, an invader? He did what he wanted to. He did what he was ordained to. What we see in Ajmer nowadays. Now Ajmer is in ruins because Ajmer was destroyed. It was a center of learning. Mathura was the center of learning. Kashi Sanjiti was the center of learning. Haridwar was the center of learning. But they were destroyed beyond recognition by the invaders who entered us, and they did what they were ordained to do. So I have no quarrels with those invaders who were trying to destroy the monuments of Indian knowledge system. They were not centers of pilgrimage, they were the centers of Nalanda, Vikramshala, Udantapuri, Amravati. Those people who forget their history, itihas, they become itihas. We should never ever forget our history. But still India doesn't repent that our monuments of knowledge were destroyed by the invaders, because the monuments were only the physical manifestation of that jnana, madam, that knowledge which was preserved in our own mind and consciousness. How will you destroy this whole? So Bakhtiyar Khilji and all those invaders who entered India could not destroy the whole, because the whole was a part of our consciousness. This is a very important clue to understand who we are. So what we did to our own consciousness, ma'am? We are responsible for systematically destroying Sanskrit. For systematically, methodically, I'm not bothered about colonial India or post-colonial India, all this jugglery of words and cant that is imposed on the heads of our. The Tagore used the word, and mind those words, the dolorous dumbness of Indian religions. Of all people, think of, look, India is perhaps the only country in the world where you have the fiercest possible self-criticism of our own errors. And English department is no exception. Any error in English was supposed to be a terror. The terror of English department was so much. Read the English teacher by R. K. Narayan. I will read a quote from that. Look, R. K. Narayan, was he an un-Englished person? Yes, he was. They could never be English, while they were the champion master writers of Indian English. You could never say that Raja Rao was an English writer. He was writing like a rishi. R. K. Narayan was writing like a man in sync with the Purusharth and Dharma axis of Bharatiya tradition of Kavya and Sahitya. So look at, and you will really see that how this dolorous dumbness was carefully cultivated in the departments of social sciences, humanities, and particularly English in India. Every error of a vowel and consonant was frightened upon. You were shaking in your boots, trembling in your clothes, that my professor will catch you if an R.P. Bhatnagar happens to be there. Or, I used to tremble literally while I was in Shimla, and Professor Bhatnagar taught me how to pronounce by rolling your tongue, lolling your eyes, and twitching your shoulders 10 times. I was trying to be a perfect mimic in Nakalchi. That's why Gora, Rabindranath Tagore, Gora says, Gora is an Irish, not an Indian. That's an identity crisis. But Gora, the protagonist, says that to me, all the Indian intellectuals are the victims of, may I use that word in Hindi? Because my all errors in Hindi could be forgiven by the Department of English. Bandarpan, not my word. ये आप अपने अंग्रेजी के बच्चों को बताइए. The more of bandar, the more of mimicry we do, our scholarship is sound. Look, there is no Sudhir Kumar speaking. This is the real situation that obtains, that prevails in the departments of social sciences, humanities, and literature, being no exception. So these and the best minds of India commented on it, and the worst minds of India, like professors like us, we always avoided making reference to those purple passages, those purple vimarshas. So we never want our Gandhi. Yahan se only 100 years away from this university, there is a center for Gandhi studies, there is a center for Vinoba studies, there is a center for Kumarappa studies. How many views of Kumarappa or Vinoba or Gandhi went into the making of your research studies and pedagogical studies? How much of wisdom that you have only 50 or 100 years away from Department of English or your humanities? How many social science students were ever sent to the Mahakumbh to study whether they are the students of management, or they are the students of sociology, political science, or even literature, as Sanskritik Adhyayan Kendra, as the center of Indian cultural studies. But your cultural studies, as you rightly put it in the topic, cultural studies in India, not Indian cultural studies. So why should we be bothered about a colonized mind speaking in terms of decolonization? Look at this. Partho Chatterjee was right when he says the entire discourse of nationalism was a derivative discourse. Because you have never cared for that Rashtriya Pragya, those national narratives, that Katha. Now I come to this. How would you decolonize? Problem. Once you do your homework, enlighten the students with those words, those concepts, which are your own concepts, through which you can have a worldview and have a meaningful, constructive dialogue with the West. Not as a mimic, not as a bandar, not as a Nakalchi. Remember, Nakalchis and bandars, they got the most prestigious fellowships. If you want to get a fellowship, prepare a project. India in Bharat and Bharati Sanskriti is anti-women, Brahmanical, patriarchal. It refuses to have any commerce with L, G, B, T, Q, A, B, C, D, E, F. I do not know how many other letters of alphabet are left out. You will immediately get the international attention because you are ready to prove that India is barbaric, as Marx said, that this society remains barbaric. It is not civilized. It is beyond, it is outside history, and it only waits for the colonial masters to be brought back to history, to be brought back to civilization, to be brought back to efficiency. Look at these words. Heart of darkness by... Where was the heart of darkness? On the basis of civilization, on the basis of efficiency. They justified their racism. Caste was their construction. Look, caste, there is no such discourse on caste in India. There is jati. But I asked the students of literature, Have they ever read even one single book on Jati? Not us. That is your category. When you understand what Jati is and has been, you will understand the Jati and Jati Pratha in real sense of the term. You can only, you have that competence or adhikar to criticize that caste Jati Pratha, not caste system. Remember, only when you do your first homework on what Jati is. Gone are the days when we were having Vyakarana lessons and we were told about Dipali, a Jatiwachak Sangha, a common noun. Look at the relationship between genus and species. A mice is a mammal and a man or a woman is also a mammal. Jati is one. Man or woman is a mammal and a mice is a mammal. So wherein lies the difference? The difference lies in the manifestation of that Jati, remember? So Jati in terms of a mice will be different from Jati in terms of a human. Though they both belong to the overarching Jati. You know, Jati literally means to be born, to exist. It comes from the Sanskrit root Jat. I just gave you an example, like Rashtra cannot be and blah blah blah. So all your great thinkers, I will come to some great thinkers of Jaipur itself. It's a great center of learning, and I will ask a question. This question I would put before the Vice Chancellor of this university and the professors of Department of English and Social Sciences and Humanities. Did they ever care to include the great insights and great knowledge produced by such savants of Jaipur and of course those who are located in University of Rajasthan, like Professor Daya, like Gopal Chand Pandey, Professor G.C. Pandey. Yeah, Daya no, there has not been a single page of G.C. Pandey in the Department of English, Department of Sociology, Department of Political Science. We have become so hermetically, so insulated. So these two. Then what about the two great Indologists? You know, that is Pandit Madhusudan Oja and Pandit Motilal Shastri. Their works have been, some of them have been translated into English. This is the knowledge tradition. A few examples from the knowledge tradition of Jaipur itself. But we have been ever indifferent to our own Jnana Parampara. Why blame as Gandhi never blamed Macaulay or Macaulay's mate? Gandhi said that the coming generations of Indians will curse Gandhi's Hindu Swaraj. The coming generation of Indians would curse those anglicized, westernized, primarily English-speaking Indian intellectuals who are responsible for enslaving, my words, not my words, for enslaving the minds of millions of Indians. Gandhi's famous words, 1909. How much we cared for that. So, look at a particular title written by Pandit Madhusudan Oja, The India Narrative, Bharatavarsha. In 1930s, he was a kind of a Vedic scientist. He went to Maharaja Madhav Singh Ji II. In 1902, he went to England. He delivered a lecture in Sanskrit, in chaste Sanskrit at Oxford University. Your own great scholar. And remember who was present in the audience? The great Vedic scholar, MacDonald. You know, and look at the views published by of those what we call the Orientalists. Some of the Orientalists were great scholars also, like Max Muller and MacDonald and other kinds, the French Orientalists, though they had their own, I will say, kind of ambiguous role, because they were funded by the imperialistic powers, but you can't dismiss their sadhana. And they said, here for the first time after Swami Vivekananda, a person who discoursed on Bharatiya Gyan Parampara, the Vedic Gyan system. Vedas are not the sacred texts. Mind you, there is again a kind of myth and mystique woven around the Vedas. Vedas are the books of knowledge. They are not to be kept in a cloth and put in a kind of temple. Look at what Maharshi Dayananda stood for. Again, Maharshi Dayananda. Look at this constitution and composition of Satyartha Prakash, where for the first time, logically, rationally, he not only explored the meanings of the books, the sacred books of Islam as well as Christianity. Great minds that India produced. So, and what about Pandit Motilal Shastri? So, Bharatavarsha, the geography, the culture, the territorial spread of India, and how India impacted the outside world. Methodically written, empirically written with a kind of reason. No, it is not a book which is so much into a kind of metaphysics that Aham Brahmasmi and Tattvam Asi kind of thing, which is again, they are the Mahavakyas, thou art, and I am Brahman, the Supreme. They are the Mahavakyas. But there are no such Mahavakyas. There is no such metaphysical mystique. You can read them as you are reading a contemporary narrative about India. That's why Kapil Kapoor and Rajneesh Mishra translated that Bharatavarsha Arno Upakhyan by Pandit Madhusudan Ojha as Bharatavarsha, the India narrative. Second was Pandit Motilal Shastri. More than 200 books were written by Madhusudan Ojha. And then his disciple Motilal Shastri wrote more than 80,000 pages on different aspects of Bharatiya Gyan, of your own Jaipur. Now, one of the important books that caught my attention was, you see the name, Satta Nirpeksha Sanskriti. Satta Nirpeksha. Satta Sapeksha Sabhyata. That is what we call culture in the discourse of Bharata, in the narrative of Bharata, will always remain detached from power, political power. Only then it can retain its sanctity as Sanskriti. Whereas Sabhyata, that is the kind of material living, I would say, the material living, which is necessary for the existence of any society. Now that will always be attached to, that will always be in alliance with the center of power. So it will be Satta Sapeksha, and that book comes out with some astounding results. When he gave his 5 discourses at President House, Rashtrapati Bhavan, Motilal Shastri, our own first President of India, Rajendra Prasad, used to wash his feet before the lectures would begin. He was a true Acharya, Motilal Shastri, in the true Bharatiya sense. Remember? Now, where are those exemplars? They were our exemplars. And therefore, this loss of our own self, this loss of our identity is rued by some great minds of India. And how to reclaim that lost self through our own Sahitya. Sahitya means to be in togetherness, to be in association, to be in harmony with. These meanings are absent in the etymology of literature. Look, what is the etymology of literature? Mind you, literature as a signifier that suggests a body of creative writing, mind you, a body of creative writing, came to the West only in 18th century when Dr. Samuel Johnson was writing his dictionary in 1757. For the first time the term literature was used in order to refer to a collective body or a body of creative writing. Literature is a very fairly recent term in the modern sense of the term. Like nation is only 240 years old term in the present sense of the term. So look at the textuality and taxonomy of these terms, which we now accept as they were always and already given to us. What were our terms? Our term was Sahitya and Kavya. So Sahitya first comes in play, when Bhartrahari in his Niti Shakar, he says, Sahitya Sangita Kala Vihina Sakshata Pashu Uksha Vishana Hina. That is one who is devoid of Sahitya, togetherness, harmony, association, non-dual relationship, empathy. Now these are the literal meanings of Sahitya. So not only the association between word and meaning, Shabda and Arth, remember, entire Western discourse is focused on word and trying to find out its meanings. But the problem is that their vimarsh is grounded in conflicting ideologies. It's a conflict-centric arthas. There is no progress without the conflict. And that's the major difference between the Indian worldview of Shabda and Artha and its togetherness and the Western tradition of associating word with the meaning. So you always have a postal condition. You will always have a kind of antinomian. You always have a kind of oppositional positionality in order to mean something. So this kind of conflict-centric association does not obtain in Bharatiya notion of either Kavya or Sahitya. And therefore, those who say that Sahitya and Kavya are only Sanskritic constructions. Second, look at the essay, and I would ask Deepaji to get it downloaded from Google. 11 objections to Sanskrit criticism by Acharya Kapil Kapoor. 11 objections. And I was a member of the editorial board of the Indian Encyclopedia of Indian Poetics, and of course recently the government has entrusted me with the responsibility of editing a companion to Indian literature. Now, what kind of Indian literature would I make a companion of? If my all explanatory material, explanatory concepts are borrowed from the West, and this Indian companion is only available to Indians in English. It's a mega project when you have to prepare that companion, the Bharatiya Sahitya Kosh, Bharatiya Sahitya Avadharana Kosh, a Kosh, an encyclopedia where that concept, that there is the concepts of Sahitya and Kavya, literature and Sanskriti in Indian languages. And then this is translated into English. The error that we committed, that we prepared the text of our juridical significance, that is the Constitution of India, only in English. We did not make any valid, juridically valid text in any Indian language. Lo and behold, what kind of decoloniality we are talking about? That's why J. Sai Deepak, Vikram Sampath, Sandeep Balakrishnan, Sanjeev Sanyal, they are the ones who are coming from outside the departments of history, outside the departments of literary and cultural studies, who are opening up these hitherto colonized aspects of knowledge. ये साधारण बात नहीं। तो आगे देखिए, the English teacher, what does R.K. Narayan have to offer? This education has reduced us to a nation of morons. A nation of morons. We were strangers to our own culture and came followers of another culture, feeding on leavings and garbage. My dear students, feeding on leavings and garbage. What about our own roots? I am up against the system of education which makes us morons, cultural morons, but efficient clerks for all your business and administration offices. And don't forget that R.K. Narayan, U.R. Anantamurthy, Raja Rao, Gandhi, Anand Kentish Kumaraswamy, Sri Aurobindo were linguistic and literary Luddites. है ना, बड़ा मुझे भी अच्छा लग रहा, बड़ा फैशनेबल टर्म होती है। Luddites means वो संकीर्णतावादी सोच के आदमी है ना। We are not हिंसक विचार। We are all for receiving those noble ideas. Ano Pritva Yantu Vishwata. Let all noble thoughts come to our side. We say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is your watchword, but that is only Ardha Satya. Ayam Nijah Paroveti Gadana Lagchetasam Udar Charitanam to Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This Vasudha, this whole world becomes one family. Only when in that family we exist as an equal. But if others continue to talk in terms of it is their culture, or we also talk in terms of our own superior culture, it is neither a family, it is not a Vasudha. So look at that Mahopanishad verse, that the oft quoted line, half line, creates a kind of misunderstanding. No world is one family until or unless you reach that higher level of consciousness where all become equal. All, remember, it is only for those who can acquire and attain through practice, through sadhana, that consciousness of non-dualistic understanding of the world. Not for all. So, again you see, Tagore, he wrote an essay, The Center of Indian Culture. Look at how Tagore combines language, literature, bhasha, sahitya and rashtra. These are the three coordinates. They are the important coordinates of the consciousness, or what you call the cultural consciousness of any people. And how Tagore says, this is our own Tagore. In the United States, in Canada and other British colonies, the language of people is English. They are not against the use of English, but they say this is the language of education in the colonies. It has great literature which had its birth and growth in the history of the British Islands. But when this language, mind you, the situation of English in India, but when this language, with all its products and acquisitions, matured by ages on its own mother soil, carried into foreign lands, which have their separate history and their own life and growth, it must constantly hamper the indigenous growth of culture and destroy individuality of judgment and the perfect freedom of self-expression. That is to say, not only the narratives will be derivative and derived, our own interpretations of our own narratives will be doubly derivative, because we have already abandoned what Tagore says through our own education system. We have been uprooted. We have become culturally deracinated, from our own knowledge systems. Mind you, I would ask my students who are sitting here as research scholars to just download that essay. It's a conversation between David Damrosch and Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, held in 2011, published in the Journal of Comparative Literature Studies. That essay is available on the net. Kindly download that essay. How does this conversation begin? Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak says, now, after having written Can the Subaltern Speak and the Death of a Discipline, she says, time is up, and these are again not my words. We should abandon the literary studies in terms of literature. These are not my words. These are the words of one of the arch Marxist, feminist and post-colonial thinker, who herself was responsible in imposing a kind of pseudo-research-based essay called Can the Subaltern Speak. I'll come to that essay. That essay itself. When I sent my own published essay, debunking how bad research, how unethical, how an example of unethical research was Can the Subaltern Speak, Gayatri Didi did not answer. Because she abandoned that position altogether after say 10 years. Gayatri abandoned her own position of Can the Subaltern Speak. That's the beauty about the West situated Indian metropolitan thinkers. You know? So Gayatri says, and David Demers, they say, if you pursue literature, world literature, comparative literature, post-colonial, these are not my words, my dear. ये मैं उन्हीं के शब्द आपको बता रहा हूँ जिनका आतंक आपके ऊपर है. You know, you are in the awe of these great minds, our own thinkers. If you don't drop the name of Gayatri Spivak or David Demrosh or Foucault or Derrida 3 times, and of course coupled with Heidegger and Gramsci 5 times in your research article, no one is going to publish your essay, my dear students. So the more dedicated, you are creating not an interpretation, but an ecolalia. Again, a jargonized word that I am using for India में जो जितना ही कठिन बोलता है, जो आपकी समझ में नहीं आता है, वही सबसे बड़ा स्कॉलर होता है. You are not having ecocentric criticism. अगर आप ecocentric criticism पढ़ते, you would have been told the meaning of Prithvi. Prithvi, the meaning of Prithvi. You would have been told about the Prithvi Sukha of Arthashastra, the Krashi Sukha of Rigveda, the Manu Sukha of Rigveda. You are not told about these insights that come from India. So what I am saying, ecolalia of the West. Echoes produce counter-echoes. Echoes produce counter-echoes. So you heard from me, I heard from Gayatri Didi or someone else, then you will terrorize your own colleagues or your own friends by having an ecolalia. So there is no dhwani. A pratidhwani, and it creates no anhaganad. It becomes a kind of noise, a deafening noise, a babble of tongues without any substance. But the more insubstantial you are, the more you are acknowledged. अरे यार बड़ा बढ़िया भाषण था, and क्या हुआ नहीं कुछ समझ में नहीं आया. कैसा सुधीर जी कैसा बोले, बहुत ही बढ़िया था. क्यों? सब समझ में आ गया. This is the paradigm. This is the litmus test of the intellectual credentials of all those venerable speakers who are thrown on your heads as these poets. Nobody thinks, nobody comes to you as your own friend. Sangat Saddam, Sambhadadham. Let us go together, let us be together, let us enter the gate of knowledge. And that was my first discourse in the Nalanda, where even a gatekeeper would test your knowledge before you enter Nalanda Vishwavidyalaya. In 6th century AD, that was a great center of learning, because the students were first in touch with the gatekeeper. And आज तो आपका आधार कार्ड मांगते हैं, your आधार card is your identity. Those days your knowledge, your competence was your identity. There was no quota system. So that's another story. So my point is this, that until or unless we understand what Tagore wanted to say, that he said that I detest this artificial arrangement by virtue of which foreign education tends to occupy all the space of our national mind. Mind you, Tagore said that we do not like to live on the outskirts we do not want to live on the outskirts of knowledge as the viewers of texts and drawers of book learning. That is to say, your existence as a scholar, as a research scholar in any university in India doesn't depend entirely, exclusively on your imitative acceptance, your imitative repetition of what has been said and thought in the West only. Remember, what about your own thought systems? What about your own knowledge systems? So Tagore, the most internationalist, perhaps, he had a running quarrel with Gandhi. Mind? Gandhi had another conception of Sahitya, Sanskriti and Bhasha. Then there was a running dialogic, dialogic debate between Gandhi and Tagore from 1921 to 1941. If you read the letters exchanged between Gandhi and Tagore, two great minds, remember? And in between was Ananda Kumaraswamy, who was also a great thinker. Kindly read this interface of these three minds. And even you can include Baba Sahib Ambedkar. When Baba Sahib Ambedkar wrote that great essay, Annihilation of Caste, don't forget this line. He said that liberty, fraternity, and equality are the values that I prize most. But I have been told, though I do not understand the Sanskrit language, though I have been told that the Vedantic wisdom, if translated into practice, would enable the Indians to discover the meanings of these Western constructs themselves. That is to say, the value systems which we imported from the West, liberty, fraternity, equality and justice, which are very much ensconced in the preamble of Indian Constitution. It was Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar in that essay which was fulminating against all kinds of injustices, all kinds of inequalities. He did not and did not forget to point out that all this samata, samya, samarasata, which was our own vision, well established and well included, incorporated in the very texture of Bharatiya Gyan Parampara. So spare a thought for that kind of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So again, as I said, what was the vision of Sahitya? Now, just 2 or 3 examples. That our discourse on Sahitya, as I said, kindly go to Bhartrhari, and after Bhartrhari, when he said that without Sahitya, this samarasta, this harmony, this peace, this kind of empathy, this kind of connectivity will not entail in any society. But the literary meaning of Sahitya is first established in Rajsekhar's Kavya Mimamsa, when he, for the first time, creates Sahitya Vidya, that literary science. Literature is also a science. Why? There was also a Kavya Purush. The discourse of Kavya was a Shastri discourse. It was written in those languages which were not the languages of the people. They were the languages of great minds. So Kavya Purush could not reach out to the people, and therefore Rajashekhar in 10th century he constructed the agency called Sahitya Vidya. So it is through that Sahitya, what were the languages in which Sahitya was? Paishachi, Ardhamagadi, Prakrita, Apabhransha, Pali. Remember, these are the languages veritably were spoken by the people of India, and therefore the first book of stories, remember, apart from Jatak, was Katha Sarit Sagar, which was written in Paishachi and Ardhamagadi. And later on, remember, all those writers writing in Sanskrit started writing in Prakrita, Ardhamagadi and Pali also. If you read a Bharatshakatikam by Shukla, remember a work which is remarkable for its what you call subalternity. Now that work itself has 24 times of Prakrita languages. That work is in Sanskrit. Look at Anandavardhan's Ganyalok, Shemendra's Auchitya Vichar Charcha. Remember, even our literary thing, has examples both in Sanskrit and Prakrita. So this Marg and Desi paradigm, this Brahmanical and non-Brahmanical, people-centric languages, this folk and classical, this is a category in the West. But read Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra, that the primary objective of Natya, that is to say that any kind of representation, whether it is cultural representation or audiovisual representation, is a local, is people. So, literature or sahitya has to be local dharma because it has to support what, and it is established in what? Truth and dharma. It is truth and satya and dharma. Any kind of representation, including cultural representation, aesthetic representation, if it is not grounded in satya and dharma, and there will be various kind of combinations. Ramayana and Mahabharata, I end with this. Ramayana and Mahabharata. Ramayana is one of the idealistic representations, remember. Their ideals are upheld so high. It starts on a note of sorrow. When the sorrow of the world creates the first shloka, Man Jad Pratishtham Kamlava. Look at that killing of that bird with an arrow by a hunter. It triggers off that creativity in the heart of Valmiki. And who was Valmiki? Who was Vyasa? For example, who was Vyasa? Mahabharata is written in a kind of realistic narrativity. Realistic. Therefore, there is so much adharma, there is so much loss of dharma in the society and culture that is represented in Mahabharata. Therefore, you see the two history itihasas written in India, two itihasas, not history. History has a different kind of orientation and epistemology in the West. We believe in itihasa. And what is itihasa? Because itihasa is different because it has the element of katha. It has the element of akhyan. That is dharmartha kam mokshana. Any narrative which is written and disseminated in society, it's a condition in India that its narrativity should be grounded in dharmartha kam mokshana. Dharma, artha, kam and moksha. Fourth, we do not negate that significance of artha, economic empowerment as well as desire, including sexual desire. We do not say sexual desire or desire that it is a taboo. So artha and kam and bracketed by dharma, righteousness, duty, nobility of character and conduct, and then liberation, including social, political, economic, cultural and spiritual mukti. So dharmartha karma mokshana, upadesha samannita, and then there is instructions. There are instructions in the form of narrative. Then purvavrittam kathayuktam, there is the narration of the past through the mode of narrative, katha. Mode katha ka hai, kathayuktam itihasam. That's why katha, narrative is important in Indian tradition. Needless to say that katha is an important element in the research methodology of India. If you go to Indian research methodology, a course that I have designed and I am offering at Nalanda University right now, Nyaya, that is critical examination. Nyaya is, the theory of Nyaya is the theory of logical critical examination of any subject matter. And it has a very important element, the element of sanshaya, that is doubt, and the element of katha. And katha includes telling, katha includes var, discussion, katha includes destructive logic, that is vidanta, katha includes jalpa, that is equivocation or verbal play. Katha also includes nigrahisthan, the points of disagreement. There are 16 such coordinates in the Indian discourse of research methodology, remember. But that is all available in English, but it is hardly included in our courses on research methodologies in Indian departments of social sciences. Look, there is no religion, there is no God, there is no divinity that is involved in the theory of Nyaya and Sankhya. They are very much the modes of critical exploration of any subject. But Indian students are never exposed to these enabling insights of critical examination. Only then we can have an enabling conversation as an equal with the West, without which we will go on crying over decolonization or colonization without creating our own spaces in the realm of knowledge, creation of knowledge, dissemination of knowledge. Dhanyavad.
Thank you, sir. I can say with the behalf of everyone that each and every word of yours truly touched us. Now, with us we have Dr. Bill Gaffney, our guest of honor. Dr. Bill Gaffney is a legal expert, immigration consultant, and tech entrepreneur. As director at Kaviti International Law and senior counselor at Indo-Euro Consultants, he specializes in immigration, human rights, and education services. He also leads Network Growth LLC, focusing on digital solutions, a life member of Institute of Constitutional and Parliamentary Studies. He contributes to legal research and governance. With a global presence, he worked across the USA, India, Australia, Canada, England, and Dubai. His expertise bridges law, education, and technology to drive impactful change. I invite you, sir, on stage for your thoughts to share with us. Sir, the stage is yours.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to apologize in advance because I have very little Hindi to express certain concepts, as well as Professor Sudhir Kumar, who has delivered a very lovely lecture interspersing with Hindi, interspersing with Sanskrit terminologies. My grasp in these areas is very small. So having said that, and having said thank you to a wonderful speech from Dr. Sudhir, I might just add that many of the topics he covered, I intended to cover, and he's stolen my thunder. But I will persist nevertheless and enlarge on some of those topics from the Videshi viewpoint. First of all, I'm extremely honoured to be here amongst such a lovely audience of intellectuals, educated people, colleagues in the education industry, wonderful students, and dedicated servitors to the education community. So it is indeed an honour to be here. I see amongst the audience familiar faces, and I'm very glad to see them. So to begin with, let me start with a greeting, Namaskar. Also amongst, if anyone here is from the Punjabi community, Sat Shri Akal. Amongst our Muslim brothers and sisters, Assalamu Alaikum. And of course, for those that I might have omitted, for example in South India, Namaskaram or Vanakam. So having said that, let's get that aside and get down to business. First of all, I'd just like to cover a little bit of background, what I'm doing here in India and why. It may be of interest to some people to note that in fact, I have lived in this country and served this country in the education and legal sector for more than 25 years. During that time, I've noticed a significant and background resistance in some ways, and a little bit of a hangover in some ways, blaming the British Raj for what we see today, and we blame the British Raj for what we believe we've inherited. I challenge how many people in this room actually were born before independence. There might be less than a handful. There may be 2 or 3 or 4 you can count on one hand, and even they would not remember life as it was back then. So here we are, 2, 3 generations later, still lamenting, still having a hangover over the British Raj. I think what we need to address is our own mindsets. India has wonderful intellectuality, an enormous depth of talent, an enormous depth of knowledge, and a huge, rich history. Have we forgotten that? If we have to look inwards at ourselves and start occupying the space which is rightfully ours. Speak Hindi, no problem. Nurture your own home languages, no problem. Why blame the British that we're using English as a medium of instruction? It's already a fait accompli that all around the world, English is lingua franca. When our founding fathers, like B.R. Ambedkar, wrote up the Constitution, how did he draw the knowledge of the other constitutions that he relied on? Some 6 or 7 other constitutions, including Japanese, Russian, and so on. It was because those documents were available in English. They weren't readily available, nor did the founding fathers speak those languages specifically. But they drew the concepts, Desi-ized them, and made a beautiful constitution that we know today as the Constitution of India. Cut and paste the best pieces of so many different brilliant thinking and put it together in today's constitution. So let's have a look at the English medium as simply a way of bridging communication between people. We don't have to let go of our own culture. In fact, in reverse, we should nurture it and value it, codify it, and keep it pristine. Now, most people, when they see me, the character, the Videshi, it's assumed, oh, he must be British. It's an assumption, just like I suppose in Europe, many people cannot tell the difference between a Bangladeshi, a Hindustani, or a Pakistani, or even Afghani. They can't even tell the difference between the types of headdress, which country someone comes from. So similarly, someone from European background can often be mislabeled. I'm pleased to announce that my background is not British. So any hangover there can't be pointed at me or my ancestors. In fact, my heritage is of Irish extraction, and Irish had their own problems with British imperialism, and it's well known historically that we engaged in a 900-year resistance called the 900-Year War to regain the freedom and our own sovereignty of our own country. In that process, my ancestors, some nearly 200 years ago, fled Ireland and settled in Australia during what was known as the Great Potato Famine in the 1830s. So my forefathers were survivors of that, while more than 2 million people perished at the hands of the British. So let's not cry about old wounds. At some stage we have to let go of the past and embrace the opportunities of the future. English, thankfully, is something that anybody can grasp. It is in fact not a pure language. It never was. It's a hybrid. Very few people realize that English came about with the influences of Latin, and that's more than 2,000 years ago. Many people don't realize that more than 1,000 words of Greek exist infiltrated through the English language. Hindi and Sanskrit also have a place in English. the English language never had a word to describe the concept of karma. To describe the concept of karma in English would take a paragraph. There wasn't a singular word. So what did the English do? Okay, we adopted. It's now in the dictionary. Bungalow was another. And so English is a hybrid language, and it has sourced its meanings and its context from so many cultures. So I think carrying any kind of a hangover, having to let go of British and maybe having some resentment towards this is no longer relevant. This lovely country full of diversity has had long enough, more than 75 years, to get its act together and let go of all that and desi-eyes the way it wants to. The transformation's taking place, perhaps a little slowly in some areas, fastly in others, but shall I say that let's simply use the umbrella of English for what now it is best used for, and that is bridging the gap with different cultures. On that note, I'd like to point out that the country I come from, Australia, is a multicultural country, arguably more multicultural than what we claim in India. More than 130 different nations live together under the same flag. English is the umbrella language, yes. But there are more than 40 other languages that are gazetted as Australian national languages, including Greek, including Russian, including Vietnamese, Thai, German, Italian, and so on. Even more than 5 Indian languages are codified as Australian national languages, including Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, Gujarati, Tamil. All of those are recognised languages in Australia. What do we mean by recognised languages? We mean that when a minority reaches 1 lakh or more people in Australia, that language is officially gazetted, all the government documentation is translated into that language, and people from that community are brought in as translators and interpreters to service that community. So that's true inclusivity. It's true recognition of diversity and cultures. Let's see this happen in India. That would be really lovely, where that diversity and inclusivity becomes part of the norm in this country, rather than, if you like, polarization, north versus south. You know, we don't want that. Take, for example, some of the attitudes I've found in my travels in South India. The Tamils will stick to Tamil. No, that's the original language before Hindi, they say. And other than that, we speak English. They don't want to speak Hindi. Take other languages, for example, in the north. The north might be saying, well, hang on a minute, Hindi should be the national language, and that should be imposed on everybody. My take on this is that India is a vast continent, or subcontinent, shall we say, with so many different cultural norms and values. What is needed is a unifying language which actually isn't imposed, but is simply the lingua franca, without any baggage from the past. So in this concept of decolonizing, my take on the decolonizing attitude is, it's about altering our mindset, and that's all. And encouraging that altered mindset with the next generation, with our children. And that's also manifesting amongst the students and the Gen Z of today. How is that manifesting? It's because of the use of technology. Many of us, and many of the people in my generation, never had the benefits of internet, mobile phones. In fact, some of us even grew up without telephones. So the knowledge at the fingertips of the youth today is amazing. The tools are amazing. And many of the young people of today, that's what we call the Gen Z, are letting go of all those old paradigms. letting go of any hangover that might be residual in our society of the past. Whether they're misdeeds or not, it's no longer relevant. It's gone. It's past. So let's embrace that as part of the future direction in education. I think that's about all. I think at this particular point, everyone's dying for a cup of tea, I'm sure. So I'm sure Sue will take a break and have a cup of tea. Meanwhile, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to address you today. And namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for stating the importance of inclusivity. That's really important, and we all agree to that. Now we have with us Professor N.K. Pandey, a renowned authority. So Professor N.K. Pandey is a distinguished scholar in Hindi literature. He holds a PhD from Banaras Hindu University and has been a professor of University of Rajasthan since 2009. Currently, he serves as a Director of School of Humanities and Head of Department of Hindi. Professor Pandey has participated in numerous international conferences and has been honored with prestigious awards, including Acharya Ramchandra Shukla Purushkar in 2024, by Sahitya Academy Madhya Pradesh Sanskritik Parishad, the Vishwa Hindi Samman in 2023, Shiksha Bhushan Samman in 2010 and 2018, Karma Yogi Purushkar in 2009, and Raksha Tarveen Maithili Sharan Gupta Samman in 2018. I invite him on stage to share his insights with us. Sir, the stage is yours.
अंग्रेजी विभाग द्वारा आयोजित आज के इस प्रतिष्ठित संगोष्ठी में उपस्थित प्रोफेसर सुधीर कुमार जी, डॉक्टर वी.आई.श्री गैफने, इन अंग्रेजी विभाग के अध्यक्ष प्रोफेसर दीपा एस माथुर, कार्यक्रम को संयोजित कर रहे प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर अरुण कुमार सिंह, संचालन कर रहे डॉक्टर आदित्य काला, सभा कक्ष में उपस्थित अंग्रेजी के बहुत ही वरिष्ठ प्रोफेसर, देश भर से आए हुए प्रिय विद्यार्थियों, अभी हम लोगों ने प्रोफेसर सुधीर कुमार जी को सुना, वी.आई.श्री गैफने जी को सुना। इनका माथुर ने बहुत अच्छी तरह से विषय का विज्ञापन किया और प्रस्तुत किया। प्रोफेसर सुधीर कुमार जी वर्तमान में नालंदा विश्वविद्यालय से आते हैं। हिंदी का ये सौभाग्य है कि हिंदी साहित्य के इतिहास की शुरुआत यानी पहला पोएट नालंदा विश्वविद्यालय का प्रोफेसर है। यानी एक प्रोफेसर ने हिंदी साहित्य की शुरुआत की। सरोज वचन भी कहते हैं। डीकोलोनाइजेशन पर बात करनी है, ई औपनिवेशीकरण। अब जो हमारी बनावट है 200 वर्षों में जैसा हमने सोचा और उसके पहले 1000 वर्षों में जैसा हमने सोचा, उससे इतर वी करके बढ़ना है, वी औपनिवेशिकता की ओर। और ये कोई आसान काम नहीं है। सुधीर कुमार जी ने बहुत अच्छी तरह से सरल अंग्रेजी में पूरी भारतीय संस्कृति को निचोड़ कर रख दिया। शिक्षा के साथ की बात संप्रेषित हुई ही होगी। सरापा कहते हैं कि जो मैं कहना चाहता हूं कह भी दूं तो उसे समझे कौन। रौतम वाय गुरु कहीं रौतम बुझई सूर्य अपभ्रंश रौतम वाय गुरु कहीं रौतम बुझई शीस सहजा मिया जिमिसा न जगू कासु कहीं जयकीस। जो मैं करना चाहता हूं रौतम बुझई शीस, उसको शिष्य समझते ही, उसको समझते ही, कई बार समझने की कोशिश करने पर भी नहीं समझ में आता, लेकिन जो कहता हूं वो सहज अमृत है, चारों तरफ व्याप्त है। उसको देखो, उसको देखो, अनुभव करो। सहजा में ये जीव सब जगह वो सारे संसार में व्याप्त है। काल कहीं जय किस, कौन कहे उसको और किससे कहे। समझने के लिए शिष्य के स्तर को गुरु के स्तर तक पहुंचना पड़ेगा। गुरु जिस लेवल से जिस स्तर से बात कर रहा है उसको समझने के लिए अपनी ऊंचाई वहां तक ले जानी पड़ेगी। यदि हम उस भाव भूमि में नहीं है, हम कहीं अन्यत्र दूसरी दुनिया में जी रहे हों और हजार वर्षों में जैसा हमने समझा जो हमारे भीतर प्रविष्ट हुआ है उस रस के हम अभ्यासी हो गए हैं, तो यह भी औपनिवेशीकरण की भूमिका में जाकर के हम उसको नहीं समझ सकते। भारतीयों की समझ में ये आम बात थी, बहुत अच्छी बात कि भारतीय ऋषि भारतीय कवि जब बात करता है तो कई संदर्भों में वो भारत की बात भूगोल के संदर्भ में करता है, ज्ञान परंपरा के संदर्भ में जब बात करता है तो विश्व की बात करता है, वसुधा की बात करता है और जीवन की निरंतरता की बात करता है। निरंतरता सनातनता है, सनातन निरंतर है। उनकी बात छोड़िए जो निरंतरता को ही नष्ट कर देने की घोषणा करते। सनातनता निरंतरता बड़ी प्रसिद्ध महाकाव्य है जयशंकर प्रसाद की कमाईनी। महाप्रलय के बाद मनु बैठे हुए हैं, श्रद्धा मिलती है तो उससे प्रश्न पूछती है कौन तुम संस्कृति जननिधि थी। उसके प्रश्न में इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम, भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा, कौन हो तुम। महाप्रलय के बाद एक पुरुष बैठा हुआ है, श्रद्धा पहुंचती है तो पूछती है कौन हो तुम, कौन हो तुम। संस्कृति जननी, संस्कृति निरंतर, निरंतरता को, निरंतर रहमान जल निधि के तट पर बैठे हुए तुम कौन। ये संस्कृति क्या है, ये भारतीय संस्कृति। और उस भारतीय संस्कृति के तट पर तुम बैठे हो, कर रहे निर्जन का चुपचाप। इस निर्जन का चुपचाप प्रभा की धारा से अभिषेक, प्रभा तेज को कहते हैं, तेजस्विता की धारा से अभिषेक करने वाले तुम कौन। उसमें निरंतरता को देख रहे, प्रभा को देख रहे, भारतीय संस्कृति के मूल्यों को संपूर्णता में देखते हुए पूछ रही है कि तुम कौन। कश्मीर शव दर्शन आनंद बंधन की बात, भरत मुनि के नाट्य शास्त्र के सिद्धांतों को समझाने वाले आचार्यों में प्रमुख आचार्य अभिनव गुप्त है। अभिनव गुप्त ने प्रतिविद्या शैव दर्शन दिया। उस प्रतिविद्या शैव दर्शन की काव्यात्मक अनुभूति, काव्यात्मक अभिव्यक्ति जयशंकर प्रसाद करते हैं साहित्य के भीतर, और साहित्य के भीतर भी औपनिवेशिक कर। पहली बार भारतेंद्र हरिश्चंद्र ने 1874 ईस्वी में एक 24 साल के नौजवान ने स्वदेशी की चर्चा की। व्यापारी परिवार में पैदा हुआ व्यक्ति, तब तक किसी भारतीय नेता ने स्वदेशी की बात नहीं की। पहली बार एक कवि कर रहा है, व्यापारी परिवार से है, उनको पता था कि ये जो इंग्लैंड से कपड़े आ रहे हैं उसमें भारतीयों का कितना शोषण है, कितना रॉ मटेरियल भारत से इंग्लैंड का, और वो बनकर आ रहा है तो उसकी चिंता है कि भारत के बुनकर बेरोजगार हो, भारत के कुम्हार बेरोजगार हो, भारत के कारपेंटर बेरोजगार हो। और फिर उसका वर्णन करते हैं कितने प्रकार की धोती बनारस में बनती है, कितने तरह के अंगरखा बनते हैं, कितनी तरह की साड़ियां हम बनाते हैं, अब ये हमको बना करके देंगे। एक प्रतिरोध और अपने निर्माण के भीतर से प्रतिरोध कि हमारा नॉलेज सिस्टम यह है, उसको तहस नहस करके अपनी ज्ञान परंपरा को अपने को ला करके यहाँ रखना चाहते हैं। ज्ञान परंपरा स्थूल रूप से जिसकी चर्चा डॉक्टर हमने की और सूक्ष्म रूप से उसको नष्ट करने की एक कोशिश, और इतने दिनों तक दबा दिया गया, और उस दबा हुआ व्यक्ति जो दबा कर रखता है उसके भीतर वो ताकत की अनुभूति करता है, और ताकत की अनुभूति तो करते ही है जिसने हमको दबाया, जिसने हमको क्रश किया, मारा, उसके भीतर ही हम सौंदर्य की भी अनुभूति, वही अच्छा है, वही बेहतरीन है। और उस पूरी की पूरी परंपरा किन्हीं कारणों से शासन करने के तरीके और शासन करने के लिए अर्थव्यवस्था, संस्कृति, इतिहास, उसको नष्ट करने के बाद और उसके भीतर से तो सब कुछ होने के बाद जो कुछ बचा उसको पूरा भारत को भारतीय संदर्भों में देखने की कोशिश, जो 150 वर्ष पहले विधिवत रूप से प्रारंभ हुई, उसको राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति 2020 के तहत भारत सरकार के स्तर पर इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम को लाने की बात की। और वह नॉलेज सिस्टम सारे विषयों में भारत को फिर से भारत की दृष्टि से देखो, तभी भारत पे एक विकसित और शक्तिशाली देश के रूप में खड़ा हो सकता है। भारत की कला, साहित्य, संस्कृति, इतिहास, राजनीति नव चैतन्य होकर अपनी बात कहेगी। इस प्रयास में अन्य विषयों के साथ साथ अंग्रेजी के अध्यापक में बड़ी मात्रा में पुस्तकें लिखी हैं। कई का नाम प्रोफेसर सुधीर जी ने लिखा, और एक नई जनसंख्या, नई आबादी, नई पीढ़ी जो अंग्रेजी माध्यम से पढ़ रही है, उनके लिए पर्याप्त सामग्री आज के सचेत साहित्यकार और लेखक भारतीय समाज के सामने रख रहे हैं। बहुत अच्छे विषय पर यह संगोष्ठी आयोजित की गई है। आज 5 मिनट की, कल एक विशेष व्याख्यान है, और इस उद्घाटन समारोह में आमंत्रित करने के लिए प्रोफेसर दीपा माथुर और सिंह जी के प्रति विशेष धन्यवाद व्यक्त करते हुए मैं अपनी बात पूरी करता हूँ। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, sir. our international conference on decolonizing narrative and interpretation, we also take this as an opportunity to celebrate academic excellence with the unveiling of the latest issue of our departmental journal, RUSE, R-U-S-E. RUSE is a peer-reviewed journal with ISBN accreditation, reflecting the rigorous scholarship of our department. Today, we proudly present second issue of Volume 1, 2024, making another milestone in our commitment to research and academic discourse. Sir, now, and ma'am, we will now have, will inaugurate our journal, RUSE journal. Thank you. I request all of you to please open it.
Yes.
We are happy to release our academic journal, RUSE. As we move forward, we take a moment to present a special publication, the Conference Souvenir. This book captures the essence of this discussion, key abstracts, and important details of the conference. I invite our dignitaries to launch the souvenir as well.
Yes.
ज्ञान ढूंढ पुष्टिया भिन्न है पूरी मोह इच्छा
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Please be seated.
आपने रामायणी का के पाठ याद है?
As we conclude this remarkable gathering, it is our privilege to express our heartfelt appreciation to our esteemed guests. Their presence and insight have enriched this conference, making it truly special. As a small token of our gratitude and respect, we now present mementos to our distinguished guests, a gesture that reflects our deep honor and appreciation for their valuable contribution. First, I invite Dr. Arun Singh, our organizing secretary, to felicitate Professor Sudhir Kumar, our chief guest, as a gesture of our gratitude. Thank you, sir. Now I request Professor Deepa S.P. Mathur, the convener and head of the English department, to honor Dr. Vic Campney, our esteemed guest of honor, for gracing us with his presence.
Yes.
Once again, I invite Professor Deepa S.P. Mathur to facilitate Professor N.K. Pandey, our respected guest of honor. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. As we move forward, I would really like to apologize for all the mistakes that I've made. And I'm really thankful how peaceful you all are with me, and thanks for bearing me. As we come to the conclusion for this enriching session, it is time to express our gratitude to those who made this event possible. To deliver the vote of thanks, I now invite Dr. Aditi Kalra, the organizing secretary, on the stage. Ma'am.
Thank you, Niharika. Warm wishes to Kumar and all present here. Honorable days, conference convener and head of department, Professor Decolonizing Mathamam, esteemed guest of honor, Dr. Vikram and Professor L.J. Pandey, distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Sudhir Kumar, respected delegates, fellow colleagues, my dear students. On behalf of the organizing committee, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all present at the inaugural session of this international conference on decolonizing narrative and interpretation, literary and cultural studies in India, organized by Department of English, University of Rajasthan. I thank our veteran, Professor Alka, Vice Chancellor, University of Rajasthan. We are privileged to have Professor Deepa S.K. Mathur as our convener and head, whose dedication and leadership have been instrumental in bringing this conference to fruition. We are honored by the presence of our guest of honor, Dr. Vikram and Professor L.J. Pandey, whose esteemed contribution to their respective fields have inspired many. So your support and encouragements are invaluable to us. A special thank you to our keynote speaker, Professor Sudhir Kumar, for delivering an insightful keynote address. Sir delved into the nuances of dharma, atmabodh, Indian tradition of Sanskriti, Itihas and Sahitya. Sir, your perspectives have provided us with a deeper understanding of the importance of decolonizing our academic framework and embracing indigenous knowledge systems. As we conclude today's inaugural session, I express my sincere thanks to Professor Rashmi Jain, Director MMDC with the staff, and the senior faculty members of the department, Professor Rachel ma'am, Charu ma'am, Sudha ma'am, Nidhi ma'am, Shora ma'am, Arun sir, Aruna ma'am, and thanks Professor Devras Sharma, Professor Sanjeev Mishra sir, Professor S.K. Asulal. I thank all the delegates, my dear colleagues and participants, last but not the least to all the volunteers who have truly been the backbone of any event. The enthusiasm, dedication and support of us all will undoubtedly shape the success of this conference. As we embark on the sessions ahead, let us engage in meaningful discussions that challenge the existing paradigms and promote a more inclusive and diverse approach to literary and cultural studies in India. Thank you all once again, and I wish you a very successful and insightful conference. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for delivering the vote of thanks. As we come to close, marking this occasion with unity and respect, we invite everyone to please stand for national anthem.
अधिनायक जय हे भारत नायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा शल जलधि तरंगा तब शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाए तब जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।
Thank you everyone. Please be seated. With that, we conclude our energetic inaugural session. We will now take a short break for hygiene and make that an opportunity to relax, connect and engage in this meaningful conversation. After that, we'll have our plenary session in this very hall. We have an insightful lineup of speakers. Thank you. We will see you soon.